And we can start the recording. Yeah, there we go. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming back again this Tuesday. I am Julie Maier, and I'm one of the educational specialists for California Deafblind Services. You're looking at a slide right now that just kind of reminds you that I'm planning to present for 30 minutes, and then we will follow that with some time for questions, and I hope a lot of discussion. So during the presentation, if you have a question or you want to make a comment, feel free to put that in the chat. You can also raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar, but I won't answer those questions till the end. And we've got some of my stalwart colleagues behind the scenes that will be popping any links into the chat as well. And then I'll have a resource handout for you again. And at the very end, we will give you a very short survey, and we'd appreciate if you would fill that out. So here we go. So today we're going to talk about shared reading and shared writing. It's something that I did a couple sessions last fall on literacy topics. We did experience books and also just promoting meaningful literacy at home. And so these are two specific strategies that are used in a lot of classrooms. And a lot of people have been giving thought to how you can also do those things at home. So hopefully you will walk away at the end of today with some new ideas and maybe a couple more tricks in your bag. All right. So I want to start out with hearing from you. So I want you to just think about reading and writing and go back. What are some of your earliest memories? So it could be a particular activity or person, it could be a book or a character, it could be how you remember that you became a reader or a writer. When did you what are those early memories of when you started to recognize that you were a reader or a writer? And just post them in the chat, please. And then I'll take a look. Oh, Kayla, practicing writing my name over and over. Going to the library and listening to books read aloud. Oh, yeah, story time at the library. I bet many people share that one, Katie. Anybody else have memories? Favorite book? When the teacher would ask me to read out loud as fast as I could under a minute. Oh, okay. So timed fluency reading, Sierra. Good. Scribbling on scraps of paper my dad would bring home. Okay, great, Maurice. Olivia, I had a book of Grimm's fairy tales and my mom would read to my siblings and I. Okay, Olivia, thank you. My mother reading stories and teaching me letters and words. So yeah, so a lot of us remember so those earliest memories are actually things that happened at home before we entered school. Um, Anybody else? Okay, well, I'm going to go back to my slide. So thank you everyone for those contributions. And it highlighted what I wanted it to highlight is that we kind of we develop an identity as a reader and writer, and we base it on how we see other people doing those activities and tasks. And oftentimes it's something that starts at home. Um, so I'm gonna just stress again. I showed this slide last fall, but it's something that I really want to just put out there again. That literacy and communication are very entwined, and it is a form of communication. And that is why I believe that literacy should be considered for all children, no matter what their levels of, if they're emerging communicators or more proficient communicators, if they can identify letters and sounds, or if they are just learning to attach meaning to objects and connecting that to an activity. Because it's a way that literacy provides this opportunity for children to share ideas and their opinions and feelings. It also helps to connect them with others. There's two photos on this slide. The top one is a brother and sister that are checking out this cool burlwood sculpture at the Oakland Museum. So that is not a book. but it is an object, and she's learning something about how large redwood trees can grow to be and things about the world and concepts. Um, and you could take it further after she went home. Then this is a proficient communicator, this tiny little child up in the top. She could go home and read books about trees or redwood forests. She could write about it. She could draw about it. And then the bottom picture is my own daughter sitting with her tiny little cousin when she was, I don't know, 5 months old. And she was already interested in just the action of looking at books and things like that. So, from a very early age, engaging in literacy skills can really help students learn about the world, gather information, and connect that text and pictures and objects have meaning. So, important to do both at school and home. And then again, I just want to give a shout out to the wonderful site that has been that was put together by a group of people with the National Center on Deafblindness, different state deafblind projects, and other interested folks in the field. The literacy website for children with combined vision and hearing loss, and I wholeheartedly agree with their sort of vision or their manifesto that that we really that true adults that really want to help children develop literacy skills need to actually have the belief that children can and will learn literacy, and that there's a lot of different ways to become literate, and that it is founded on our experiences and concepts that we develop at an early age. And that's true for everybody. It's true for typically developing sighted and hearing children. They just have a lot more advantages because they can see and hear things while that's all occurring. Um, and that it's really strongly connected to communication and socialization, as I already talked about, and that it exists upon a continuum. This website is just, and I'll maybe somebody can pop that link. I think it's just National DB Literacy. Anyways, if someone from my team would pop that link into the box in the chat. If you weren't at my sessions last fall, or you've never heard me talk about literacy at a webinar, this website has just a plethora of resources and ideas and information, and I'd be happy to talk with you more about it, but we can't get too into it today because it would take too long. Another thing that they talk about, though, the folks that put this website together, are some specific ways that adults are really essential to promoting literacy. And first, it's in that expectation that we really have to believe that there's going to be a way that children are going to show that they can read and write, even if it doesn't look like traditional literacy. There will still be a way that they're expressing their opinions, making comments, gathering information. That reading should be enjoyable. And it's, again, the adult's role to provide the materials and plan the activities that will engage the child. So follow the child's interests, think about the things that would be most motivating to them, so that will help to build their skills and also build their confidence so that they start to identify as a reader and a writer. And then adults will also look for meaningful opportunities. So they will think about being that guide that shows and models for student what the purpose of reading is. What's the purpose of writing, and what are the ways that we do those things? Because again, remember, children who have both limited vision or hearing or problems in those areas, they are missing the information that other sighted and hearing children are learning about what literacy skills are and how we use them. And then finally, a focus on concepts and context. So they are going to pay attention to the child's current life experiences and plan activities that will match what the child's understanding of concepts is, and also then try to expand upon that. And throughout the slideshow, you'll see me saying child, student, because I know that I have a mixed audience of families and professionals out there. So the two things I want to talk about today are shared reading and shared writing. And both of them, you'll see, have a lot to do with that. It's really not this idea of formal instruction and showing a child the correct way to do it. It's really about adults engaging in these activities in enjoyable ways that help to scaffold the child's skills and guide the child, so that the child builds skills and confidence at the same time. So shared reading occurs when there's that interaction between the child and the student, or child and adult as they read together. And it provides this way for children to experience reading and the variety of types of reading that there is. There's not only storybooks, that might be what we start out with young kids, but then we can show them the many different types of reading materials there are and reasons for reading. And that we're trying to do two things: help the child enjoy reading, because again, enjoying the activity is more likely going to lead to more skills and more fluency in reading. But we also want to help the child or student start to think about the text. And that's another place where the adult guide is so important. Now, shared writing is similar. Erin Sheldon, she's an AAC consultant and specialist from Canada, and she also has a child with really complex communication needs who uses augmentative and alternative communication. But she calls shared writing with training wheels, which I think is a terrific description, because you're not expecting the child to be able to do all of these formal ways of writing until we kind of show them and let them practice a lot. So they will engage in writing activities together. And very importantly, the adult does two things. They help the child understand why we write. So what's the purpose? And then the how of it. And then there will be a lot of different ways that you can do that together. So that could be putting together messages about the day, creating a story together, helping children be able to learn how to express their interests and their preferences. And again, this should be an enjoyable activity, and it should be very child-centered. You're kind of following the child's initiations. You're looking at ways to support the child and how they want to achieve this. So it fits in nicely with, our deaf-blind philosophy of follow the child. Now, I'm going to check my time. Okay, we're doing well. This is how some of you might already know shared reading. If you work in schools, if you're a professional that works in schools, or you're a parent that spends time in school classrooms, you've often seen big book time, where all the kids come to the carpet, the teacher gets out a big book, and they begin to read the book together. So shared reading, typically when you see this term shared reading, if you look at the literature for general education or sighted and hearing kids, this is the format that you see. And it's a strategy you see more obviously in the younger years or elementary education, because that's when students are learning these literacy skills. There are ways to do shared reading with chapter books, though, for older students. So students join into reading the book or the text, so it doesn't have to just be a book. It could be a different type of text. But they're getting modeling and guidance from the teacher. And that's helping the children learn to think about the text that they're reading, learn to think about the questions that they might have about it, or that they might have about the story or the text, develop fluency. And the key thing with it is that it's a low-risk activity in terms of mistakes. So kids who might be reluctant readers, kids who might not feel skilled or who might be struggling, shared reading can be very successful for those kids because they're joining in. They've got the teacher modeling, they have peer models, they have support, and that it often includes repeated reading, so you get better and better. However, as you can see from this picture, it's a picture of a teacher seated by a large book, and a child is pointing with a pointer up to the text on the bottom, and other children are looking on. There's a high level of visual and auditory input in typical, if we're not thinking about children that have other access needs, okay? And the purpose of it is some of the things I've already mentioned, so I don't want to go too deeply into this. You have the slide, but we want kids to enjoy this and to be successful. And we want to build their language skills, build their vocabulary. All this happens because they're having these repeated opportunities, seeing a fluent reader like the teacher showing them how to do this. And then they have lots of opportunities to engage with the text. And they'll learn about different types of text and formats and structures. And then the whole group of kids is starting to recognize themselves as a community of readers. And then this is the structure that typically follows. This is from Fontes and Pinnell, which is it's a reading, it's a specific type of reading program. They've got a lot of books and things like that, but they also have, there's a particular way that they do shared reading and shared writing. So this is the reading structure. I'm not going to go into it because you can read this yourself and you'll have this slideshow posted. But there's a specific order that you take because you're supporting kids to be successful. We're keeping the risk of mistakes and failure low, and we're looking for particular ways to help the children gain confidence and skills. So that's there for you. But now I want to talk about and I feel like there was something off of one of those sides. But let's shift now to shared reading when we think about it being at home. So I love this image here that I found. And I made a correction because it was making a big assumption that mothers are the parent that or caregiver that reads with children. So I changed that to parent. But it says, you know, you're a parent when, and it says it takes you an hour and a half to read a 12-page book. And then you see in a word bubble that the mother is holding one smaller child and like a baby, and then or a toddler, and then an older child in her lap. And she in the word bubble it says, "Once upon a time, yes, that a choo-choo in a tiny town, a red choo-choo, very good. There lived a." You're right, it's really a train, but he can call it a choo-choo, okay? A funny little man with, well, I don't know why he doesn't have a beard. A big nose and, no, they don't show him shaving, do they? A little red engine. Well, the story doesn't say if he has a TV or not. So this is a good example of what shared reading should look like when it's one adult guided with another child. That you're engaging with the child, you're building their vocabulary, you're following their lead. So it's very nice, I think. So yeah, think and also building concepts and helping them kind of make those connections. So, shared reading at home. There's some photos here. I used these last fall too of our family specialist, Myrna Medina, reading with her children when they were quite young and shared reading time. But so when you're thinking about it at home, and I have a nice link that's posted on the handout from Paul Brooks, which is a publishing company that thinks about, it's talking about students with disabilities and how to promote shared reading at home. So they actually have 16 tips, but this is what I'll talk about today. Is first, you want it to be a regular routine. So it's something kids are consistently engaged in. But what you do want to think about is making sure it's at a time that is good for the child, a time when they're comfortable, when they're not too sleepy or too tired or ready to go running around. So you want it to be a time where the child's ready to be comfortable sitting and relaxing. And you don't want to rush these activities. You want it to be fun. And then let the child take that lead in choosing the book. Have a variety of things. Have a library of things that they can pick from. And last fall, I shared examples of experience books or ways to make adapted books. So think about those types of things too, how you would change this. And I think one of my additions that I had on an earlier slide didn't get saved to the PowerPoint because the one thing I did want to point out with shared reading in schools in that large group is that there's a lot of access issues that have to be addressed for a child who either has vision impairments or who is deaf or who is deafblind. Because, as I said earlier, a lot of this relies on your pointing out things in the book, either the text or the pictures, you're commenting on them. You're commenting on what the child is pointing at or saying or verbalizing. So there's a lot of visual and auditory back and forth. So if you have a child who is limited in those areas, you're going to have to think about access. So are you adding tactile elements? Are you using aided auditory inputs? Are you using sign language? And I'll show you some examples of that in a second. So and you also then want to think about equity in terms of response. How is a child able to participate in the same way that of other children if they're doing choral reading or if they're reading with a sibling? And then varying your reading to suit the story. So, trying to use character voices, fast and slow, or soft, depending on the character. And then a really great thing to do with shared reading, and there's actually a lot of research literature on this as a effective strategy with students with intellectual disabilities, is using a repeated storyline, and that you can start to really build students' expectation for that storyline to come up and find ways that they can react to it or respond to it. So encouraging the child to join in on that. So looking for storybooks that have that repeated storyline, like a lot of the Eric Carle books have it. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? And so on. So look, books like that can be great. And if you're thinking of older students, you can kind of create your own. And then making comments about the story and connecting it to the child's experience and building on those concepts as we talked about earlier. And then really encouraging and responding to any comments or questions or reactions that your child has. Okay, so that's important for it shared at home. So now we'll look at shared writing activities. So these are some ideas. These are ways that you often see it used in elementary schools and sometimes with older classes. And then I had some ideas for how to do it at home. So predictable chart writing, I'm going to specifically show you that. Teachers writing morning messages out. So again, it's routine. It happens all the time. The whole class is there. There's particular spots that the kids have to fill in the information. So again, in those situations, we're going to want to think about how we're making this accessible to someone who needs that isn't able to use their vision or their hearing to get the information. So we're going to have to make those accommodations or modify things. A school home journal, I'll also show you how to do that. Just making lists. In lots of classrooms, you'll see lists for all kinds of things, or alphabet walls, things like that. So there's just lots of ways for kids to be, and all along the way, the adult is guiding and modeling this, so that children learn in small steps with practice and time. And then finally, making and publishing books, and I'll show you some resources for that. At home, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but what you want to do is think about all the ways that if you're a parent out there that you use writing in your day, or if you're a teacher, talking with families to identify ways, but making and sending cards, helping to fill out the shopping list, or watch as you fill out, telling your child what you're doing. So children that can't see very well don't, see their parents write out the shopping list and then get to the store and refer to it as they walk around. So letting them know that there's ways to do this. They'll need to know that if they are someday going to use some kind of device on their phone where they are able to record what they want for their shopping list and then go find it. Kids could, and the family could list places that they visit or list places they plan to go visit. There could be lots of ways to use lists at home. You could be marking days off a calendar. That's another way it's an important way that we use literacy, using schedules and calendars, and you could teach them that. The child could use a memento or scrapbook that might be similar to the school home journal that they're using from school to tell you about their day. This could be a way to tell their teachers or friends at school what they're doing. And then finally, social media posts. I've been recently following a couple of students that I know who cannot write themselves, but they love photographs. And so either their siblings or their parents help them select a photograph and then give them a choice of what caption to put on the photo. And it's been it's been a nice way for them to stay connected to their peers, but also to be learning kind of something in popular culture and whatever you think of social media. There's a lot to think. All right, predictable chart writing. There's two photos on here just to give you a sense of what this looks like. Typically what you see it look like when kids first start to learn it, and this is something that's really supported in the literature for students with extensive support needs and intellectual disabilities, and also who use AAC to communicate. You start with the topic, and then each child in the class just fills in the end. You all start with the same sentence. and then they all fill in their own thing, and then you have their name. So, and it's a 5-day activity. There's a link to the University of North Carolina Center for Literacy and Disability Studies in your resources, and you can learn more about this. But so you introduce the topic and you write out the chart. That's what happens on the first day. Again, this was with the group in the class. The next day you reread the individual sentences. You might cut them up into strips and we read each person's. The third day, we're going to start to play with language. We're going to cut the sentences up. So now the students have to put them into the right order. So you might hand them 4 pieces and it says like, I, computer, the, and they have to reframe it. The fourth day, be the sentence, so they act it out. So they get the sentence strip or they get the pieces of the sentence, put it together, and then you do clues and games to kind of identify who's going to act out that sentence. And then finally you can make a book at the end. So which they could illustrate and things like that. There's a photograph at the bottom that has, so this is showing you that you can do this differently for children who are emerging communicators. You can have the sentence, what do you do in the spring? And then there's 4 choices. It looks like planting, look at birds, rainbows, and butterflies. And then children can pick what they want their choice to be. So there's ways to adapt that and really make this meaningful for students with more extensive support needs, including deafblindness. And then school home journals. Megan Mogan works for the Arizona State Deafblind Project. She's one of their ed specialists. Her background is speech language pathology, but also augmentative and alternative communication. And she's got some nice blogs on the Paths to Literacy website, which I've promoted a lot in my trainings. And she has a really good one that you should check out. And maybe we'll take a look at it if we have time during discussion. But so she has this boy, Enrique, and he picked that day that they carved pumpkins, that was the most exciting thing that happened at school. So you identify a meaningful experience, and then you figure out how are you going to represent that so that it's meaningful for the child. So for him, they glued on some of the pumpkin seeds, and then he dictated his entry that he wanted to say today to Dear Mom. So he decided who it's going to. Today I scooped the most seeds out of the pumpkin, Enrique. And then you figure out a way to make this permanent. So for him, then his teacher, the visually impaired, came in and they got together and using hand under hand, he helped to braille this letter because right now he wasn't fluent in braille, but they were introducing him to it. And then they taught him how to feel the braille and to read it together and practice it. And then it goes home and he can read it with his family. And then they can learn something about what he did during the day. And Megan, at the beginning of the blog, talks about what inspired her was she went to a training with Carolyn Musselwhite, who's really famous in the area. She's a real leader in the area of augmentative and communicative students that use AAC to communicate. So they don't communicate verbally. And she really believes in literacy and believes in the capacity of all these children. And so she said that it's really hard she's heard from so many of those families that it's really hard that they can't find out from their child what they did during the day. They would love to learn one thing that their child did. And for Megan, she thought, wow, she has her own children. And she thought, wow, like that is a part of my daily ritual that I really enjoy, hearing about my kids' day. So she started thinking about kids who are more impacted in terms of their vision and their communication skills. So she wrote that. Her suggestion for kids who aren't even at Enrique's level, where they can't even tell you the sentence, is just help them select an item that represented something special in their day, put it in a baggie or a bag, and you can write a quick note to the family just to kind of explain what it represents, and then the family and the child together can explore that. So that would still be literacy, but you're also building on communication and concept development. So nice way to connect all three. Now I'm going to stop my share to show you a few things that I have set up here. Before I do that, I'll show you a couple slides so you know what they are. again, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They developed this deafblind classroom model years ago, but I found some cool resources there. And one is that they have these PowerPoint book templates that are all set up, so you could make a book and you could use their template. So the fact that their template is already there is going to save you some time. So I'll show you that. And then I want to show you a couple of, there's a misspelling typo I'll fix with Michigan. I want to show you a couple of ASL story bilingual read alouds, because one other thing that's on your resource handout is some resources specific to deaf readers, because ASL is a distinct language from spoken English. The way that students that communicate through ASL, who are fluent in ASL and not in spoken English, they develop literacy in, it's a different trajectory. So there are some specific tips. So if you are working with a child who uses sign language and is learning literacy through sign language, there's some tips there for you. So I want to show you these two things. I know we're at 4 o'clock, but then I will go to questions if that sounds okay. Unless there's anything burning in there, Maurice or Kayla, that I need to, let's see. Wait,
No, you're okay right now, Julie.
okay, so let me, oh wait, I've got to escape my PowerPoint, hang on, myself, and then get to my Safari. And all right, first I'll show you the book templates. Okay. So, Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, and again, this was a study. This was some project that they had funded like over a decade ago, where they developed this deafblind model classroom, and there were these resources. So, whoopsie, hang on. Okay, so and again gets into the reasons why we won't get into it, but then the book templates allow you to reread the books, give visual feedback, auditory feedback, things like that. But now I will show you one, and hopefully this will open. Oopsie, it's a download, shoot. All right, well, I'm going to tell you about it. There's one that has all of the A, B, C, all the way through the alphabet on each page. So you could make an ABC book with a child, and what's cool about it is you go and pick the picture you want. So they give you an example that they picked ape for A, but A could be the child's sister whose name is Ariel. It could be their favorite food, which might be an apricot. It could be their favorite animal, which is an aardvark. You can pick, so you can create your own book. They also have it high contrast for learners that need that. They also have it without the ASL alphabet, and then also in high contrast. So that's there, and then also just a book title where you could it doesn't have to be ABCs. So this is on the resource list. So there's some cool templates to start with. So I liked that. Are you seeing the Paths to Literacy page now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So then this is in. So that's also here, but this is Megan's great blog about the school home journals. This is so Deafblind Central is Michigan's deafblind project, and they are located in the same town as Central Michigan University, and that's where they're located. And there's a Charge Syndrome research lab there as well. So they worked together when the pandemic started last spring, and they put together a bunch of virtual readings. So they have all these stories that are told in both spoken English and ASL, and they're really, really nice. So, and what they did for their, we can't get these experience boxes, but you could create them. If you clicked on it, it would show you the different materials they put into each book, and they sent that out to their students in Michigan. So, so that's a cool resource. And then I listed ASL Storytime from the Outreach Center in Texas, which has some great ones. But then I thought, I wonder what the California School for the Deaf is doing. And I discovered that they actually have this site called Story Signing. And it says early childhood education, but that's down here, but it actually has story signing for lots of other grade levels, and they put up stuff every month. So, and it also is bilingual. It also lists, it's both spoken but also signed. So, if you have children who are using sign language, or who are, I'm going to come stop my share, or who are interested in it, or the family's interested in it, that could be a great way to promote to shared reading. So that's what I have for today, and so I'm super curious to see what you're seeing out there in your classrooms, and if anybody has examples to share, because I know there's, from the list of people I saw coming in, we have a lot of seasoned practitioners out there, and perhaps some families. So I'm free to answer questions or hear what you're doing.
Julie, this is Maurice, and we don't yet have any questions in the chat.
Okay.
You can either wait for questions or have people unmute and just have a conversation, whatever you prefer.